Sony has shut down Bluepoint Games, the studio that remade Shadow of the Colossus and Demon's Souls at an incredibly high level, closed. The entire development team, we're talking around 70 people, out of work. And the reporting on this is coming from Jason Schreier, who has an extremely strong track record on this kind of thing. When he reports something, it's real. So this isn't speculation or rumor, this is what's actually happening. And I need to talk about it because this represents a much larger problem with Sony and PlayStation right now that I think has been building for years and is reaching a genuinely unacceptable point. So let's start with what we actually know about the closure itself, and then I'll get into why this matters and what it says about the state of PlayStation as a platform. According to the reporting, Bluepoint was pushed toward developing a live service project, which, if you know anything about Bluepoint as a studio, is completely at odds with what they're good at. They're a remake and remaster focused team. They did the Uncharted collection, they did Shadow of the Colossus, they did Demon's Souls. All single-player story-driven games where the focus was on visual fidelity, performance, and respecting the source material while modernizing it for new hardware. That's their skill set. That's what they've proven they're capable of doing at an exceptionally high level. But Sony, in their infinite wisdom, decided that wasn't what they wanted from them anymore. They wanted a live service game, because apparently that's the only thing Sony is interested in funding at this point, despite the fact that they have shut down or cancelled the vast majority of the game as a service projects they've announced over the past few years. The pitch didn't work out, the project got canned, and rather than allowing Bluepoint to pivot to something that actually plays to their strengths, Sony just shut the whole studio down. 70 people out of work because Sony can't get out of its own way with this obsession over chasing a business model that clearly isn't working for them. And I want to be clear about something here before I go any further. I don't own a PS5. I haven't bought one. And a big part of the reason I haven't is because looking at the output from Sony over this entire generation, I haven't seen a compelling reason to actually make that purchase. But even without owning the hardware, I was still paying attention to what Bluepoint was doing because I was hoping, genuinely hoping, that they were working on something incredible. The Demon's Souls remake was stunning. It was one of the few truly next-gen showcases we got early in this console cycle, and the obvious question on everyone's mind after that was what comes next. There were rumors and speculation about a Bloodborne remake or remaster for years. Bluepoint seemed like the perfect fit for it. They'd proven they could handle a Souls game with Demon's Souls. Bloodborne is arguably an even more beloved title in that catalogue. It made too much sense. But we're not getting that now. We're never getting that now. Bluepoint is gone, and any hope of them tackling Bloodborne or any other project that could have justified the PS5's existence for a lot of people is gone with them. And that brings me to the larger issue, which is that Sony has completely lost all credibility with me when it comes to how they're managing PlayStation. And I don't think I'm alone in feeling that way. This generation has been an absolute disaster from a first-party output perspective. We're 5 years into the PS5's life cycle at this point, and what do we actually have to show for it? A handful of big-budget single-player games, most of which have been sequels to franchises that were established last generation. And alongside that, an endless parade of cancelled or failed live service projects. Destruction All-Stars, which nobody played. Concord, which was one of the most expensive flops in gaming history. The Last of Us multiplayer project, cancelled after years in development. Horizon multiplayer, which I have zero confidence is going to be good or find an audience. And now we can add whatever Bluepoint was working on to that list. Sony announced something like 12 live service games back in 2022. 12. And we're now in 2026, and how many of those have actually released successfully? I can't even name one that's genuinely thriving. Meanwhile, studios like Bluepoint, which have proven track records of delivering quality single-player experiences, are getting shut down because they couldn't successfully pivot to a completely different style of game that they were never built to make in the first place. It's mismanagement on a scale that is honestly hard to wrap my head around. These are smart people making these decisions. They have access to data and market research and all of the tools you would expect a company of Sony's size to have. And yet somehow the conclusion they've reached is that what PlayStation needs is more live service games and fewer of the single-player story-driven experiences that the brand was built on. It makes no sense. And the frustrating thing is that this isn't happening in a vacuum where the gaming market as a whole is struggling. We're in one of the richest periods for gaming we've ever seen. Independent developers are putting out incredible work. AA studios are thriving. Eastern developers are producing some of the best action games we've gotten in years. The industry is healthy. But Sony is floundering, and it's entirely self-inflicted. They're obsessed with finding the next Fortnite or the next GTA Online, and in pursuit of that, They're killing studios, cancelling projects, and hemorrhaging talent. It's not a sustainable strategy, and we're watching the consequences of it play out in real time. I also want to address something that I see come up a lot whenever I talk about this stuff, which is people accusing me of being biased against Sony or just looking for reasons to complain. And my response to that is pretty simple. Show me where I'm wrong. Show me the output from PlayStation over the past 5 years that justifies optimism about where things are headed. Because from where I'm sitting, we've gotten Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, and then what? Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, I guess. Though that launched so early in the generation that it almost doesn't count. Returnal, which was great, but also a pretty niche title that a lot of people didn't play. And that's basically it for major first-party releases that weren't remasters, remakes, or director's cuts of games from the previous generation. Compare that to the PS3 or PS4 era where Sony was putting out multiple big exclusives per year, regularly taking risks on new IP, and supporting a much wider variety of game types and budgets. The contrast is stark, and it's not something you can just hand-wave away. And now, with Bluepoint gone, we're losing yet another studio that could have been contributing to that output. A studio that had a clear identity and a proven ability to deliver quality work. And for what? So Sony could chase a live service hit that never materialized and likely never would have, even if the project had made it to release. It's a waste. A complete waste of talent, resources, and potential. And it's emblematic of everything that's gone wrong with PlayStation's strategy this generation. The other thing that's particularly galling about all of this is that Sony seems to have completely misread what their audience actually wants. People didn't buy PlayStations for live service games. They bought them for single-player story-driven experiences. Uncharted, The Last of Us, God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, Bloodborne. That's the brand identity. That's what differentiated PlayStation from Xbox and Nintendo. But at some point over the past few years, Sony decided that wasn't enough. They looked at the revenue that games like Fortnite and Destiny were generating and decided they needed a piece of that pie, and in doing so, they've neglected the thing that actually made the platform successful in the first place. And now we're seeing the consequences: studios closing and talent leaving, a first-party lineup that's anemic compared to previous generations. It's a mess. And I'll be honest, I'm genuinely worried about which studio is next. If Bluepoint, a team that delivered multiple successful projects and had a clear value proposition, can get shut down this casually, then nobody is safe. Media Molecule hasn't released anything in years and we haven't heard a peep about what they're working on. Are they next? Bend's studio put out Days Gone, and we don't know what they're doing now. How secure is their future? Even bigger teams, are they going to get pushed toward live service projects that don't play to their strengths? It feels like we're watching a slow-motion collapse of PlayStation's first-party output, and every new piece of news just reinforces that feeling. What I want, and what I think a lot of PlayStation fans want, is pretty straightforward. Stop chasing live service. Just stop. It's not working. It's clearly not working. Cut your losses, refocus on what you're actually good at, which is funding high-quality single-player games across a variety of genres and budgets, and start rebuilding trust with the audience that's been supporting you for decades. Fund new IP. Take risks on smaller projects. Give your studios the freedom to work on things that play to their strengths rather than forcing them into a business model they're not equipped for. It's not complicated. But for some reason, Sony seems incapable of course correcting, and we're all worse off for it. Bluepoint Games is gone. That's the reality we're dealing with now. A talented studio that could have been contributing to PlayStation's lineup for years to come is just gone because Sony couldn't figure out how to use them effectively. And unless something changes dramatically at a leadership level, I have zero confidence that this is the last closure we're going to be talking about. This generation has been a disaster for PlayStation's first-party output, and every new piece of news just drives that point home even harder. I don't know what else to say at this point. It's just incredibly frustrating to watch a company that used to be so good at this completely lose the plot over the course of a single console generation. Anyway, that's where I'm at with all of this. If you have thoughts, I'd genuinely love to hear them down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. We will see you in the next video.